Right then, Ruben Amorim. I don't know what he was concentrating on, but it wasn't much. He, of course, has got a horrendous record since taking over from Ten Hag. And now Mark Ogden's with us, and Darke as well. Mark, we're not even in a situation of ifs and buts and maybes. What if they deliver a trophy at the end of the season? This is it. This is the worst season in living memory for Manchester United. And it's very difficult, isn't it, to see where they go from here that's going to be positive, certainly in the short term.
Well, the plan is to stick with Ruben Amorim. I almost said Ten Hag then. Stick with Ruben Amorim and hope that he's the guy. They've invested so much faith in him that they believe he's the guy to turn it round, and they will bring players in. I think Matthias Cunha will be done early next week. They might get Leon Delap, so they are pushing the boat out in the sense that they can get players in to improve the attacking sense. They need midfielders. They probably need a new goalkeeper. But Amorim is their guy. But what would alarm me if I was Man United was his quotes after the game last night when he said that I'm not quitting, but if they want to get rid of me, I will go without compensation, which is like, that's almost like an invitation to say, wow, just let me go. He's not enjoying it. He's been there 6 months now. I mean, I've been told all sorts of stories that he was prepared to go in January, but he decided he was talked out of it, and the club had to reassure him that he was their guy, that he would be backed. The club are desperate for him to work because they put so much, like I said, put so much faith into him. Now, I refer back to an interview that Jim Ratcliffe gave a year ago. He'd just taken over, he'd just been given the keys to the club, so to speak, from the Glazers. And he was making the point that when they appoint a manager next, it will be a guy with a philosophy that would be Man United's philosophy going forward. They would stick to that. They would have a way of playing. They wouldn't keep chopping and changing. Now, if that's the case, that means that they deliberately went out to hire a guy that played three at the back, had a squad of players that weren't suited to his system, but because somebody at the club thought three at the back was the way to go, they hired Ruben Amorim. That's the only way that Radcliffe's comments make sense. But I just don't believe it. I don't believe that they sat there thinking, right, what we're going to do? How are we going to get Man United back to being great again? Let's go for a guy who plays three at the back and is so rigid with his formation and his approach that the players who play it won't be able to play it. So they're in a situation they have to either bring in players that will suit his system and hope that it works next season, or bring in players that suit his system and it doesn't work next season, and they're stuck with a load of players that don't work for the next guy, which has happened, 5-6 times now. So they're in a real hole. They really, really need it to work out. But the first 10 games of next season, Ruben Amorim's under massive pressure to prove that he's the guy. And it's not going to be easy because there are a lot of players they've got there that aren't good enough. They'll still be there.
If he's willing to walk away, why won't they let him do so, Mark? Is it just all about saving face? Because he hasn't made anyone better. This team's got worse since he's taken over.
No. I think there's an element of ego involved as well. They don't look like the guys who got it wrong twice in 12 months. They got it wrong with Ten Hag. And, you know, if Amorim goes after 6 months, they've got it wrong again. You know, spectacularly so, because he was meant to be one of Europe's rising coaches. But after 6 months, they've been abject. You know, you're right, this is the worst season they've had since 1974 when they were relegated. So he is the worst manager since then. So I just think they're desperate for it to turn around, and maybe that's blind faith. But they haven't really got a plan because, you know, if they want a guy that's going to play the way that Amorim plays, there aren't many out there. Now, there are obvious solutions. You look around, you know, I'd imagine Oliver Glasner's high on the list, but I don't even think they're looking down. From what I've been told, they are absolutely 100% behind Ruben Amorim, and the only way it'll change is if Ruben Amorim decides that he can't handle it or he's not good enough. But I do worry, you know. I look at the way they play, and I look at they have two midfielders against three most weeks in the Premier League. They get overrun. They've got no legs in midfield. They played Casemiro last night when he simply can't run anymore. So they've got no athleticism in the middle of the pitch, but his system demands that ability to get from box to box. So it's really hard to see how it works without players coming in, but they haven't got a lot of money to do that because they missed out on the Champions League by losing to Tottenham in the Europa League final.
It's incredible, isn't it, how the mighty have fallen, Ian?
It is. And I mean, I'm just listening to Mark. He's obviously got the inside track in Manchester. I mean, major surgeries needed at Manchester United, but have they got the money to do that without having to sell? Well, they're probably going to have to sell Garnacho, aren't they? Because that would be all profit in the market. To do all the things that Mark has just itemized, they need to do. I mean, and there's so much wrong. I watched that game last night and I couldn't believe the lack of spark, and fire, considering how high the stakes were for Manchester United. They looked flat. Okay, Bruno Fernandes had one of his off nights. He's usually a bit of an inspiration, but they've got wing backs who don't really make any kind of impression, especially Darke on the left. He never really has any impact. That slowness in the middle of midfield. They've got a centre forward that's never fired since he's got there. You know, there's so much wrong. The goalkeeper's not really good enough either. So it's a huge, huge job. I mean, Amorim has got the excuse, I suppose, of saying he never wanted to take the job halfway through the season. He wanted to come in the summer and start again next season. But, you know, that wears thin now. You'd have thought a coach with his pedigree would have had more impact than he's had so far. And really, I mean, I suppose realistically, if he gets to November and there's still no sign of an improvement, he will be gone, I think.
You mentioned Garnacho and his future. He wasn't happy about not starting the game, and he wasn't hiding in his post-match press conference. I've played all the rounds until the final. I've helped the team, and to play only 20 minutes today, I don't know. I'm going to try to enjoy the summer and see what happens next season. He, of course, has been a letdown as well, Mark. And there can't be that great a market for him from people who surely have watched him over the last 18 months.
Yeah, he's one of those players, Garnacho, that people are surprised that United are prepared to let him go. But I think Ruben Amorim would drive him to the airport if he could get a decent bid for him because he's not good enough and he hasn't kicked on. He's got no awareness around the pitch and he actually makes attacking moves break down. But Napoli were very close to doing a deal for him in January, around £40 million, which is surprising. Chelsea were keen as well because they see him as a young player that they can kick on and get value for. So I do think that he's young enough and he's still got the potential to attract some interest from clubs who are willing to pay, I'd say, a maximum of £40 million, to be honest. But I mean, I don't see it in Garnacho, but I didn't see it in Scott McTominay. He went to Napoli, he's had a great season. I didn't see it in Anthony. Look, he's got the Betis and he's been fantastic. So maybe it's Man United, maybe it's been at Old Trafford and maybe they leave Old Trafford and suddenly find the form and the confidence that they haven't got there. So, but yeah, I mean, I think Garnacho, Kobbie Mainoo, another one that might go because again, he's a homegrown player. Pure profit, as they say in PSR, and a guy that doesn't really fit into Amorim's system because, again, he's not quick enough. So they have got players that can move on, but then there's also the big question marks over the players that they want to move on, but who will take them? Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho might be coming back. Anthony's done well, but who can afford him? So, I mean, the problems are endless. I mean, I could be naming another 10 players that you might not be able to get rid of. So, but yeah, they're the big ones they need to move on because they're just draining the wage bill and it's not helping anybody with them being there.
Well, lovely pre-season with those returning. Mark, what's interesting is Bruno Fernandes' future. Of course, for some reason, you put him in the Premier League team of the season. That was obviously an error from your part. However, talking about what he's going to do, if the club think it's time to part ways because they want to do some cashing in or whatever it is, football sometimes is like this. He knows what sort of stir this would cause, Mark.
Yeah, well, he could have gone last summer. There was interest in Bruno from Saudi Arabia last summer, but I suppose he bottled it. He signed a new contract at United and stayed at United, and they were desperate for him to stay as well. So he's kind of tied to United on a long-term deal now. So if he was to leave, it would cost the club that he would go to a lot of money. And I'm not quite sure that at 31, anyone apart from clubs in Saudi Arabia will be prepared to do that. And I just don't know if he's a sort of player who would go to Saudi Arabia. But if United were offered a big fee for Bruno Fernandes, then you'd have to consider it because as good as a player as he is, and he has dragged them to results this season, certainly in the Europa League, no one player makes a team. If you can get a big fee and bring in 2 or 3 players to replace him, then they'll have to do it. But the concern would be the people that are choosing the players to replace him. Do you trust the Man United recruitment team to bring players in? Because let's be honest, they haven't got the best of records over the last 10 years, 10, 12 years. So that would be the worry, that they let Bruno go and replace him with 3 or 4 more rubbish players.
How risky would that be?
I'm sitting here and I'm trying to think of a positive thing that could happen to United, and I can't come up with any, and that includes selling Bruno Fernandes.
Right.
I don't see how selling Bruno Fernandes would be any way positive at all. You can't. You've got to get rid of the players that can't help you. And Bruno Fernandes, along with probably Amad Diallo, are the 2 that are clearly able to help United. After that, you can get rid of it. After that, I don't care. You can get rid of anybody. Sell who you can, how you can, when you can, where you can. But selling Bruno Fernandes is only going to hinder United and not help.
If in case you missed Monday's show, I believe it was, Mark Ogden gave us his Premier League starting 11. He had Bruno Fernandes in it. You've had time to reflect on that, Mark. Now, do you want to backtrack?
No, listen, I'm keeping him in the team because, as I said, that he's a guy that has carried a really bad team to heights that he doesn't deserve to be at.
16th.
Heights.
I do think that,
16th.
I tell you what, I'm scared of heights, and I don't mind being 16.
After his performance against Tottenham in the Europa League, I've now decided not to give him the Player of the Year award.
Wow. Wow, that's it. He's cut. He's cut. We asked Ian, actually, to respond with his best 11. He's got Onana in goal, which is quite interesting when you take a look at his best. Oh, wait, no, it's Pickford. Starting 11. No room for Bruno Fernandes for you, Ian?
No, I couldn't find a place for him. I mean, I hear what Mark's saying there. He was inspirational at the time for United, but you can only pick 11, and he's not in mine, but not in mine matters much.
Those glasses throw me every time, Ian. I always think, well,
yeah. I might rehire those, I think.
I think so.
I'll go for that look again.
I think so. We were discussing yesterday, Morgan Rogers probably deserves a place, so Ian, doesn't he, over Tielemans?
Yeah, Morgan Rogers. Yeah, I mean, he's a fantastic season for Villa, but you could probably name 6 or 7 people who might have made the team and are not on there, and I'm sure Mark would say the same.
Right, that's a very political answer. Thank you very much, Ian.